I am so happy to be on stage with all of you. In some capacity, I've worked with everybody on the stage, and I'm happy to be able to have this conversation. One thing that I want to share is that you may have noticed for all of the speakers today and the presenters until we get to the last presentation, we've had a lot of female representation. I think it's wonderful. It wasn't intentional, but one of the things that my husband George has told me, he's a high school art teacher, and the future is very female in the arts, and that's where a lot of the support comes from. So when I was reaching out to people and trying to figure out who could provide us this wealth of information, these were the names. And when I did reach out to male presenters, they didn't have time, couldn't make time, and so this is just evident of the world we live in and where our help and support comes from. So thank you very much to the group of panelists. So this conversation for me, I hope is going to be just as informative as it is for you. Getting through the grant process is often something that is difficult, especially for individuals. I imagine for larger organizations, once you kind of get into a rhythm, it's a bit easier. But the first question I have is, how would you advise individual artists, whether there's a deadline out there they're working towards or not, just to get ready so that when they do hear of an opportunity, they have some things kind of ready to go and they're better prepared for that? And I will ask for Waduda to answer that question. Is it not on? Okay.
Hello. Hi. How's everyone this afternoon? That's a great question, and I do want to just give a little bit of context to the audience of artists before I answer it, if that's okay. So although my position is very administrative, I want to say that I come from a background of art practice. I have been drawing and painting my entire life. So when I went to college in undergrad, I went there with the purpose of being an art educator. And it was when I was studying for my bachelor's degree that I realized that there were disparities in artists who had access to receiving grants and understanding the process and the nuts and bolts and things that were needed to be able to even compete for the grants that were available. And I didn't see representation from people like me at the seat of those tables making those decisions. And so I switched over from arts education to art history so that I could be at that space. So with that being said, so I understand, and I say that to say that I think it is important to have a person that understands the creative individual when you're in a position to try to compete for grants. So to answer the question, how can an artist get prepared?
Get ready, be ready before before it happens.
There's so much. So the first thing that you need to understand is the grant life cycle. Most grant opportunities exist and function for nonprofit organizations. And so they operate on what's called a fiscal year, not a calendar year. So a calendar year is January through December. A fiscal year in most cases is July 1st to June 30th. Okay, so you need to know that. And most funding opportunities are presented a year out. So you may be applying now for a project or an exhibition that you're looking to do a year from now. So some of the things that you definitely need to do is some of the things that you've heard before in some of the other presentations. Have a website, have your go-to, have your finances in order, have your, if you're an entity, have your business registration, have a CV that is different than a bio, that is different than a resume. Support material, whether you're a visual artist or a dancer or a performing artist, you need to be able to show those works, show how serious you are. And even if you're not an entity, there are opportunities for you to have like a fiscal agent. So like, who are some of the organizations that can vouch for you, in your application process? Well, with grant application, particularly with government grant opportunities, there are always these sessions and webinars ahead of time that you can register for that are usually free. So attending and registering for those opportunities to be able to ask questions ahead of time as you're preparing all the things that you need for your grant application is really important.
No, that's
okay.
great.
Yeah.
You mentioned
Did I?
CV, bio, resume,
Yeah.
samples of work,
Correct.
having your finances in order,
Oh, yeah.
any necessary business registration.
Correct.
Okay. Brittnee, did you have anything to add to that?
Hello? Okay. So I guess another thing that I would add to the list would be to have a good layout of what you're planning on doing. I know as far as reviewing applications when artists or organizations submit to, I guess, government funding, the biggest thing that I see is that most artists don't lay out their projects fully. So we only get a glimpse of what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to receive funding, it's kind of hard to kind of get a overall idea of what you're trying to do. So I would say take the time to map out and show us exactly what you're trying to do. And also I would say to provide, as far as wherever you're planning to hold your presentation or project or performance or whatever it may be, make sure that you are providing a reference of where you plan on having that performance, because we can't just go off of you saying, hey, I'm having this performance here. We need a contact as far as someone who can say, hey, yes, this artist is having this presentation here, because we do need, as most people would say, we need receipts to see that you will be holding your performance or project there.
So I really like the point about the layout. So I think a lot of artists dream well in advance, envision way in advance before it ever, like, rubber meets the road. But putting that pen to paper and actually writing it out and planning it out now, so if there are visions that you have or desires that you have that you look forward to, you can write it down now. It might be 2 years out, it might be 3 years out, but start the planning process now. And having that roadmap, I think, certainly would help with submitting. Shantras, did you have anything to add?
All those points are really good, and we also encourage you to think about the funder that you are submitting your application to, because every funder has a different set of policy and a different set of things that they are interested in supporting annually. So although you have set your information about your project, you don't want to copy and paste exactly for every funding entity that you're submitting your proposals to. Try to tailor make your answers to fit what the funder is requesting. I mean, it's like a job application. So when Human Resources is looking at 1 million applicants for one job, they're looking for those keywords inside of the proposal to tell them, okay, this person is qualified, they have some knowledge about what we're trying to do in terms of our service. The one key point that I want to make about Fulton County is when you're looking at our grant proposal, we do expect that you're submitting an application for a project that you can actually execute within a calendar year. We happen to be on a calendar year cycle, so always remember it's a one-time event. We don't mind that you are planning as a part of your proposal. We don't mind supporting that, but at the end of the day, you have to have an actual project you can complete by December 31st.
So thank you for that. And one of the points that you made was tailoring the actual submission to whoever the entity is, right? So it's great to have all this information together, but when it comes time to submit, to have it be specific. How do artists, and I'll let anyone take this question, how do artists figure out what's a good fit for them? So when you're looking at grants, there are a lot of grants out there and you come across something, but artists often don't have a lot of time or a lot of desire to fill out a lot of applications. So what are some things that they can look for that help them determine what's a good fit for them? And I guess I'd like for you to think about our emerging Articulate artist crowd that we have here today.
I would say do your research. Definitely do your research on the funder that you're trying to get funding from, basically. If it matches to what you envision for your project or what you envision for your overall aesthetic as an artist, and you want to link with them and you feel like you can bring something to the community by giving back to the community through this funder, then I would say definitely do your research, because they look at that too. If you're trying to put on a performance for, I would say, breast cancer awareness, and you're trying to get funding from another organization that has nothing to do with that, so I would definitely say do your research and make sure that the vision between you and the funder link up. So that would.
Hello. Yeah, I will add that when you're doing your research, which is very important, look at who they have funded in the past. And if your work aligns with the type of work that they're looking for, otherwise, applying for grants is a very lengthy process and you don't want to waste that time. So definitely research the past awardees. And then the other thing, and I'll just give a brief example, South Arts is a regional arts granting organization that specifically...
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
South Arts. Their office is headquartered here in Atlanta, but they service, I believe, 7 southeastern states. So we, the organization that I am with, applied for a grant that was a project that was completely in line with what they fund, but the artist resided 1 state over outside of their jurisdiction. And that made the decision. So really that research and understanding where they're going to budge, make a decision or not make a decision is really important, so, yep.
So, Shantras, I have a question for you. As a Fulton County funds manager, grant administrator, what's one of the requirements, right, that you see often trip artists up? Is there something over and over again that you see? And Brittnee, I have the same question for you in terms of OCA, but is there something you see over and over again from artists that you're just like, they did it again, that you could advise on?
Well, the first thing is we're really all about serving Fulton County residents and Fulton County-based companies and individual artists. So, and this is not based upon where your studio might be located. It's really about where you live. So that's one thing that typically trips up people. They're looking at studio because they have a business representation within Fulton County, but it's all about where you're based. And then the other thing that I see in the applications is just, it's a disconnect between, I guess, evaluation, audience impact, and what the project mission is in terms of the application. So there's artists tend to leave a lot of gaps in their application. Is not clear about how all those things work together.
Thank you. Brittnee?
I would say the same thing as far as making sure when you're applying for a City of Atlanta grant that you are a resident of the City of Atlanta. I get a lot of applications from artists who are outside the city, and we would love to grant funding, to specific projects, but if you're not a resident, we can't fund your project. And also providing an address verification. We do require some type of utility bill, power bill. Like, we need to have some type of proof that you reside in this resident. And the last thing I would say is support material. A lot of artists submit their application, but they don't provide any type of promotion for the project they're planning. Website, pictures, anything that you can show that, your project is actually live and you're trying to push this project forward. So that would be my advice, specifically for City of Atlanta grant funding.
Okay, so I guess what I'm sorry.
Can I add one more thing? Sure. Is that okay? Hi, sorry. So I'm thinking from a reviewer's lens, reviewing applications. The thing that I've seen that's been a stump for me that doesn't, maybe gets a bad score on an application, is that artists use a lot of artist jargon. Artists tend to use creative language and art world, words, but you really need to take time to think about how to write technically for grant, because you have to realize they're government entities and they may not understand some of the terminology that we use in the industry. And so a lot of times, if we can't get through the content of the application, then we can't make sense of the direction of the application.
So I'm going to ask you to expand on that a little bit, because I think what becomes difficult is if you're an artist talking to artists, the language that you use you think is just familiar to everybody. Are there certain keys and like keywords and phrases that you could kind of give to help artists understand what you may be referring to?
Okay, let's see. Let me turn my creative brain on here, not my technical brain. So let's say one of the questions that's a general question is, tell me what your mission and your vision is, right? What, as a grant reviewer or as a grantor, what we want to know is like, what is the core essence and direction of why you're doing this work? What is the community that you're wanting to impact? What is your why? Like, why do you feel the need to do work by a certain group to address certain issues in the community, right? Whereas if you're talking about your ideologies and your practice, and I don't know. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, I think that, I exist because therefore I am kind of a mentality. That's okay, because we'll get it in this space. But someone looking for technical, like hard facts and something that is measurable, that has outcome, and something that we can, it can be quantifiable, it can be replicated, it can be monetized or whatever have you. You can get help doing that. You can get a consultant to come in and help you just reword exactly what it is that you're saying, but make it make sense to the people that are reviewing your application.
I would say always have a second and third set of eyes to look at your entire application, just as a practice. And have someone to look at it that's not in your current circle. So you can get the viewpoint of someone that's on our panel who doesn't have an experience with your art form, or you as an individual artist, so it reads clearly.
That's a good one. So I've submitted some applications and got back that the reader didn't understand. Like, I didn't understand and it made perfect sense to me. Like, what do you mean you didn't understand? But having someone outside of my circle review that application probably would have been really helpful. You speak to the panelists who are reviewing these applications. Who are they? Who are the panelists? And not specifically, but generally, like, who signs up to be, who volunteers to be, who do you court, or who's being paid to review these applications? Who are those people? Where do they come from?
Well, we put out a call for panelists every funding cycle. So we open it to the public, and we also, once they apply, we review their applications and their resumes to see if they even qualify to review artist projects, artist works. So that's basically what we do. We put out a call to see, if anyone wants to be a panelist. And we get a large amount of people who do apply, and we only select people who are qualified to review artist mediums of different kinds. So that's basically what we do.
Do you get a lot of applications from artists, like practicing artists?
Not really.
Opportunity.
We don't. We normally get professionals who are currently holding some type of position within a larger organization, or we do get a few. I want to emphasize that because we do get people from the major arts organizations in Atlanta. So that's a little tidbit. These are the people who are reviewing these applications, people who are at the High Museum or the Alliance Theater. You just never know who may be reviewing these applications.
I just think that it would also be lovely for some of the artists, curators in this space to make sure that they're also at least applying to be a part of that process, right? So I think, one, it could help you with your own grant submissions, but also adding a different lens. So I think it's great to have arts administrators and professionals from the community, but also having a network of emerging artists who are a part of that process and a part of that scoring would be great. So if you see those opportunities come out, consider applying and volunteering your time and services.
We're looking for panelists right now, so
Hey,
FultonArts.org. FultonArts.org.
I think it would also be helpful to, I mean, you're all identifying as artists, but if you're an artist who also teaches part-time, or you're an artist that is also curating, and you're doing these other, what we call administrative artistic services, then you qualify. So don't just identify yourself as an artist. You're an artist and also an art professional if you're doing some of these other art-related tasks.
thank you. My last question before we're going to open it up to the audience to ask a handful of questions before we wrap up, but I just wanted to know if the three of you could highlight any dates and applications that may be applicable to the artists in this space. I know sometimes the grant dates move a little bit, but if you could just give them an idea, and I'm going to ask the artists to open up their phones and calendars and put a reminder in there to go out and look for these dates. For when typically City of Atlanta Office of Cultural Affairs opens up their Emerging Artists Grant Fund, the same thing for Fulton County Arts and Culture Department. And Waduda, if you have anything from South Arts, as anything that you might know that could be of assistance.
Well, we don't have a definite date as of now. All I can say is that our applications will open sometime this summer. Since the fiscal year is coming to an end, this is the final report time for our grant recipients. So all I can say is make sure you are signed up to our mailing list, and you can find it at OCA Atlanta, and sign up so you can make sure you receive the information first through our mailing list. So yeah. So
then I would just suggest put a date on your calendar for July 30th, just to see if anything has happened, if anything is out there. And if you follow Articulate ATL or Sohei Solutions on social media, when dates like that come up, we do post about it. I know Lauren also gave some sites, so just be sure to follow some of the people in this space, and you can follow City of Atlanta, OCA, as well, but just to be aware of those grants.
Yeah, I will say in terms of dates, so the the granting world, like Lauren was saying earlier about the art world, it's the wild, wild west. So sometimes the dates just come up and you have 30 days to produce like a 20-page or 30-page application. But I do want to leave you with some organizations that should be you should be connected with, and you sign up to their newsletters, and that's really the best way to get alerts. So at the federal level, National Endowments for the Arts, everyone in here should be getting their newsletters, because the unique thing about National Endowments for the Arts is that they have grant opportunities throughout the year. they have more opportunities probably than the local organizations. So National Endowments for the Arts at the federal level. Also just follow Americans for the Arts. They're kind of the advocacy arm of National Endowments for the Arts, but you'll get a lot more newsletters and information through them. And you can filter it based on your discipline and what kind of information you want. At the regional level, again, southarts.org. They also have multiple granting opportunities throughout the year. At the state level, Georgia Council for the Arts. You should also be signed up to receive their newsletters. They also have multiple opportunities and opportunities for individual artists. And then, of course, Fulton County and OCA. Some other grants that I applied to nationally, Warhol Foundation is a big one. They're headquartered out of New York.
No, that's great.
Yeah, okay. I'm like, who's on my calendar for the next 2 months? But you can follow me under my business name. I'm on Instagram as Dennis Ayres Fine Arts. So that's DENNIS AYRES Fine Arts FINEARTS, and I try to post as much information and opportunities as I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, just reach out to me. Yep.
So for Fulton County, we actually have a deadline that's coming up Monday. It was a second round of funding. It's one of those wild, wild west deadlines. We got an extra $1 million, so we had to spend it as fast as we can. But typically, we release our application guidelines in the fall. So around September, start looking for that. And again, our website is fultonarts.org. You can sign up for our newsletter so you can be in the know when that deadline is actual.
Thank you. We have time for 2 questions. Okay, Darius, if you could hit the mic.
No? Okay, there we go. All right, 2 questions.
1.
One 2-part question really quickly. All right, question is, one, I think this whole process is an understanding that there's from artists to, I want to say real world, but we'll say kind of organized world, there's a difference of communication and kind of how we communicate and how we see things. And I think as an artist, a lot of times in applying for those projects, what we're giving you all is kind of our understanding and explanation of what our process is and how we can go about accomplishing that. But a lot of times what we're getting feedback on is what we're giving you or what we're saying, this is how we're going to accomplish it. Sometimes it feels like you as artists that doesn't add up. It doesn't meet because it doesn't meet the educational or the actual organized way in which you all want it read or understood, then to us, it's like you're saying that your idea isn't fully thought out. I think the same thing happens also when it comes to artist statement in a lot of juror places in that they're expecting us to word or not to use artist jargon or, in essence, not to explain something the way an artist would explain it. So what is some of the things, and I understand all that you've kind of given us, but that's the first thing. How can we be better in understanding that? And 2, the other part is, at what point does that communication become more important than the actual, or is it that you guys can never see the fruition of the project because it's not well spoken, or is it that you guys just look at it, it's not well written, I'm not even considering the idea or even trying to get a better understanding of what's going on? Because I feel like there's always going to be that connect between artists and someone else out in the community who may not operate and continually be in that aspect on a daily basis.
I can respond. I think that it comes down to who you're applying to. So right now on the panel, we have two government, right, granting agencies, and so government, regardless of the industry, just speak government language. But if you were to apply to like a Warhol Foundation, for example, they understand creative jargon and creative language and risk-taking and just the nuances of creativity. And so if you were to apply to an organization like that, they'd snatch you up in a heartbeat because they get it, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that level of creative understanding. So it just comes down to knowing the grantor, and again, doing the research and seeing who they have funded in the past, and is it a fit for you? But if you're going to go after the government grants, what I encourage you to just get someone else to come in and help you, tweak it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Get a grant writer or someone who can assist you with getting your vision across, and make it as plain as you can. Make it as simple as you can. Lay it out, paint the picture of what you're trying to do. Because I'm an artist as well, so I am not a reviewer, but I can understand how a panelist can get confused if they're reading your application and it's coming from an artist's perspective. So just make sure you paint the picture in the simplest form, but fully grasp the full picture in your application.
So I'm sorry, just real quick though, you've mentioned grant writer and you mentioned getting assistance. Are there any free resources out there that artists can lean on? Because we have a lot of emerging artists who aren't necessarily making a lot of money from their artwork. And I do understand the importance of investing in yourself, in your career, in your artistry, but also just, there are implications with that. So are there any resources that you can share with the audience to help with some of these issues that we've uncovered?
I believe that the Foundation Center of Atlanta, which is called Candid right now, they always run a free proposal writing workshop. Now, it's based upon the foundation world, but it should give you the basics of putting together your idea on paper for other people to digest and understand as a project. And I would say what we are, at the end of the day, looking for, we have to tell the commissioners and the taxpayers how we spent their money and how it impacted the community. So we're looking for the meat of what you're doing and how is it servicing the community. So we're expecting you to be able to give us those details on how you're connected to those audiences, what is your relationship with those audiences, why is that service so unique and special for them? And we're also needing to know, who did you serve? So you have to start keeping a record of who you serve, color, gender. We have to know all of those things when we report back. So, Candid.
That's CANDID?
Candid.
Okay.
I don't know any services that are available in that capacity that isn't going to cost a lot of money. But I just fully believe in like mentors and reaching out to the people that you know, that work in some of the gallery spaces, that are in administrative positions. I've had people, an artist, reach out to me and just say, I just need you to just look at this and give me your feedback. Well, I'm not going to write the whole thing for you. You got to start somewhere, right? But I will spend 30 minutes to an hour on the weekend looking over it and giving constructive criticism. And I think you'll find that there are more people that are willing to do that than having to go out and seek a service. So
use your resources. I hear that. Thank you very much. And with that, I want to thank the three of you for joining us for this panel. I hope you guys found this informative.